Good morning, everybody. 17 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the Sunrise Show. Craig Froelich in, and on the phone with me, Oregon State Representative Duane Stark. He's from District 4, and he's taken over for Dennis Richardson, the northern part of Jackson County and Josephine County as well. And Duane, it's great to have on the program. I know it's full on up at the Oregon State Capitol building with everything going on up there because you've got basically a month, right?
Yeah, the clock is ticking. So
yeah, well, Duane, thank you for being on the program this morning. There's so many issues, but of course, the one issue that struck home and the special election Tuesday night in Josephine County, this measure 17-66, the law enforcement levy, didn't pass, missed by about 2,100 votes, 54% to 45%, about a 50% turnout in Josephine County. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as far as the final result, one of the things is it pays to advertise. Those who were opposed to the levy spent all kinds of money advertising, and those who were in favor of it tried to do the grassroots, and that part didn't work out.
No.
But the measure itself, when it comes to law enforcement, this has really struck home for me. In fact, a week ago Monday, so this is just an example. I mean, you talked about the 911 call, but a week ago Monday, my family and I, we were in Grants Pass, and I live a quarter mile from our sheriff, and I live about a tenth of a mile from the boundary for the city and the county. And so, I'm close to town, and I had to come back up to Salem. My wife needed to stay back with the kids for one last thing she needed to do the next day. Well, that night, just so happens, 4 a.m, there were 2 men at our house that were prowling, and they were going from door to door trying to break into my house. And, of course, my wife being there alone with the children, actually my mom was there, but a couple petite women alone with children didn't want these guys to know they were there, so they were scared out of their mind. So she calls 911, an hour and a half for the Oregon State Police to show up.
Right, but it's not really Oregon State Police job. They're subsidizing, correct?
I know, but yes. So that's the thing, is nobody local, there was no one local to send. And here's my wife and children in danger, and fortunately the Oregon State Police did come, but that was an hour and a half later, and I try to keep my mind from going to all the things that could have happened in an hour and a half had not those guys gotten spooked because of a couple things that occurred during that event and left. But it's just, for me it really hits home that I can be right on the edge of town and nobody's coming to help.
Yeah, it's shocking. And I was telling yesterday, I said, what do people think they can buy a dog and a gun? And this is the next thing, and you just mentioned this, Duane, this HJR 91, it's House Joint Resolution 91. Talk about this. Right, and so
HJR 21, it had a public hearing a couple weeks back, and they basically, to my understanding, they were waiting to see what happened with the levy. And so yesterday, all of a sudden, there's all kinds of chatter in the building about resurrecting this thing or moving this thing forward. We'll see what they do with it. But basically, it would send out to the voters statewide, on a statewide ballot, the ability to impose a permanent tax rate of $2 per thousand for counties to fund public safety. So basically, what this is the counties that have plenty of law enforcement are saying we're tired of paying for our Oregon State Police to go in and help these counties who don't have law enforcement.
Right.
And they're saying if these counties are going to drain our state resources, well, then they should pay for it. And they're saying that they would impose this $2 tax. And really, so this would affect 13 counties, which adds up to 30% of the population. Now, so if you think of that logically, that means 70% of the counties can vote yes, and it doesn't bother them one bit. Or, 70% of the population of Oregon could vote yes, and it doesn't bother them a bit. Then out of that 30%, if you have 54% voting no right now on a levy and 46% voting yes, well, then out of that 30%, you're probably going to expect another 15% to vote yes. So you may end up with an 85% yes vote statewide. And one of the things about if this levy, or not, as opposed to the levy, is if it's a minimum $2 tax, this bill is pretty general on that it just is supposed
where that money's going to go, right?
Yeah, whereas Josephine County, the levy that they had, at least, and now I know there's all kinds of controversy around it, and I didn't get into all the details and the arguments there, but I know that one of the components of that, it spelled out how the money would be used, and it talked about how there would be a citizen oversight. Well, there's nobody's talking about on this HJR 21 having citizen oversight. They're basically just saying, hey, let's statewide impose a tax so these counties aren't draining the resources. And I personally I think that goes too far, by the way, for the state to do that.
Oh, yeah.
But as we've seen in this building, a conservative Republican doesn't always get his way for some reason right
Well,
now.
exactly right. Yeah, and you wonder what's going to happen. When I talked to Josephine County Commissioner Cheryl Walker last week, we talked about this, and she said, no, the levy is explicit for law enforcement only. It does not go into the general fund. And see, that's been the big complaint with counties is the slush fund, this, moves in and moves out, and people get a little fussy, and which general and rightly so is the budgeting changes, and they don't keep track of where the money's going. But this levy was very focused on opening the juvenile center, keeping the jail open, and allowing the sheriff to do it. And I got to tell you, Duane, I called Josephine County Sheriff Dave Daniel and also left an email and have not heard back. But it's when I called up there, they don't have receptionists for the phone call, for the phone number. They say the 911 dispatchers will get to your phone as soon as they can when they are able. And I waited one call, 10 minutes, and did not, well, she actually answered, and then we had a phone problem and got disconnected. But the other one, 23 minutes. I felt bad that the 911 operators were having to answer. So
yeah. Well, and it's an interesting dynamic. I grew up in Josephine County. I grew up when timber was thriving.
Right.
And so I've watched it over the years, and we've always worried about if the timber money went away. And one of the arguments is, wow, well, all these people putting effort into the levy, shouldn't you be putting effort into fighting the feds and letting us log our land so that this isn't an issue? And I say yes and yes to both.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things I liked about the idea of it being a levy is it wasn't permanent, so we still have time to continue chipping away at the feds and saying, give us our stinking land back.
Exactly right. I know that's the bigger problem, and I talk about that. Duane,
absolutely.
Duane, we've got a break. But let's come right back after this. Oregon State Representative Duane Stark, ladies and gentlemen, from District 4, is on the phone with us. We're discussing the law enforcement levy from Josephine County. We're going to talk more issues. Just hold on. The Bloomberg Market Update is next.
So get up. Top of the morning to ya.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 35 minutes after the hour, it's the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. Craig Fronikin, and continuing with Oregon State Representative Duane Stark from District 4. And we were just talking about this law enforcement levy 17-66. And Duane, you had burglars, prowlers in your neighborhood harassing, and you happened to just be there. I'm glad to know that you're taking precautions now and everyone's safe and nothing bad happened. But it was a close call, too close for comfort by all means. I just don't understand this law enforcement levy, and I haven't talked to Josephine County business owners. I'm not understanding the thought process of not having enough property tax funding to properly fund law enforcement both in the city and the county. I mean, I understand Grants Pass Police Department, they seem to be doing okay as far as you can tell.
Yeah, they have plenty of patrols, but one of the issues is there's no jail space.
Yeah, right. So now you've got to cite and release or take somebody out of why they drive to Jackson County and put them in over there. Right.
And being up in Salem the last handful of months, I didn't get in on the groundwork of what some of the controversy was. I know there, some of those who were opposed had some, again, valid reasons, like, man, we have an issue with the feds, but that doesn't mean in my perspective, we keep on working on that, but we have to find a way to keep our community safe.
Yeah, and maybe you put in some clause in that 17-66, whereas if the federal lands, which, ladies and gentlemen, right, if the federal lands would be released and we could harvest our very own timber on our very own land for Oregonians, that money would come in and the other levy would go away, maybe. Right. I don't know.
And then we did have some Fed money after we were told no Fed money would come, and they started campaigning for the levy. Then they said, oh, actually some Fed money is coming. Now that wasn't our local guys trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth. It was the Feds telling you one thing, and then they say, oh, by the way, we went ahead and got this.
Right.
But it's still not enough to fund it. And then, there are people from the time I was little in Grants Pass, people have had a distrust for how our local government was spending the money.
I know that. That's why I thought maybe this 17-66 would be a little bit better, because they pointed it into the fund. It was not to be taken for anything else. It was be strictly for law enforcement. So marijuana in Josephine County, like I said, if you can't grow trees, let's grow marijuana. It's the best in the state, right?
It is. This is quite a mess, actually. So I don't know if you've been tracking what's going on here at the state level. The Measure 91 committee.
Yes, the special committee. I applauded them for helping with all of the issues except for the one local issue, which is the nut, the one they haven't cracked yet.
Yeah. So, the Measure 91 committee, they've spent almost all of their time focused on medical marijuana dispensaries, and what a mess those are. So, and trying to figure those out. So that tells you how far behind as lawmakers we are when it comes to trying to figure out what's going to work for our state. Is that the committee's named Measure 91, which is recreational, but they're still working on the past thing that we passed, which was medical marijuana.
Exactly. So.
And I don't know what happened in last night's hearing, but last week they thought they were kind of to an agreement on something, and it blew. Everything fell apart at the last minute, and. Rep. Wilson, says it's kind of like being a duck football player, and you're just about to run into the end zone and celebrate, and you drop the ball on the 1 yard line. It just didn't happen. Everything fell apart, and they thought they were there. So now what's happened is both the Senate side and the House side have put forward their own bills that go about it in a different way. The House side said, well, let's take the bill that we couldn't quite get through the Measure 91 committee, and let's add our own 104-page amendment to it and try to run it through the House. The Senate said, well, let's go ahead and do things the way we want to, and we'll run that through the Senate. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Both bills actually talk about saying the fact that we are not, as a state, law-wise, ready for Measure 91.
No, we're not. It's absolutely insane. They don't have. It's still a cash. They don't have banks that'll take money, and we don't have our employers protected against any kind of drug testing. It's absolutely insane.
There's all kinds of stuff. So a couple of the things that these both have in common, both the Senate and House bills, both of them would combine the recreational with the dispensaries and say, okay, well, let's start by saying recreational marijuana can only be sold out of a medical marijuana dispensary.
Okay.
So that way they can at least confine it a little bit. And then they're saying, okay, now let's both of these bills put forward some issues for OHA to test and packaging and labeling requirements. So they both do that. They both would combine them. They both have testing, labeling, so your quality and quantity and so forth. A couple big pieces of difference between them is the Senate bill basically would prevent local cities and counties from banning medical marijuana.
Right, so they have the ability to have a dispensary because they would hook recreational and medical together. Now that is the incentive to allow dispensaries to be everywhere and anywhere.
Right.
Minus the 1,000 foot within a school, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to read through my notes here. That it may be that I need to go back and double check what I just said. That they would allow, I don't know if it's that they wouldn't allow or they would allow a ban on medical, but what the House one does, so the difference is one puts the power in the government's hand to ban, and the House bill would actually say any sort of ban would have to be referred out to the voters, and that's in the spirit of Measure 91 as well.
Right.
So that's a significant difference on those. They're talking about, well, how do you tax this?
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Because Measure 91 said, well, we're okay for a tax on these things. Well, officially, we can't do sales taxes in the state of Oregon. And so what they're talking about doing is basically you walk into the dispensary, and if you are buying recreational marijuana, you get in line 2, and when you go through, you're going to pay, now this is what's being proposed, none of this is set yet, but you're going to pay $35 extra per ounce, and that's going to be your tax. And if you have a medical card, then you go through line 1, and you just show your medical card, and you don't pay any tax. Kind of like, showing your Oregon driver's license just crossed into Washington.
Exactly, in-state or out-of-state. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the whole thing is just a ginormous mess.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is the sad part, is that so many years were spent saying, hey, if we just legalize marijuana, we'll save because there won't be this extra law enforcement problem. Well, guess what? The whole taxing issue, filing for and showing the income on taxes could be an IRS tax evasion situation. If you export it across the state, that's a huge felony for law enforcement. So it's not making it any easier, and it's not enforceable.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been waiting to see how they plan to do this. The House amendments talk about tracking from seed to sale. So, where the seed came from and who the final buyer was. I'm sitting here going, how in the world are we going to pull that off? Think of all the things that we have blown as a state in order to accurately track and accomplish, and websites and network. And we think that we're going to be able to go in and actually track any county on who's growing what seed where and who's buying it.
No way. No way.
I haven't seen the details of how they think they're going to do that, but they say if only we can track seed to sale, then we can prevent the black market.
It's crazy. Duane, we have a quick break, but let's come back. Stay on the phone. We've got Oregon State Representative Duane Stark with us from District 4 and the marijuana and this HJR 91. Ladies and gentlemen, they need us. They need Oregonians to step up, make a call, write a letter, send an email. They need your help. We've got to do this. We'll be back after this break.
It's my life, and it's now or never. 'Cause I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live my life.
Good morning. 48 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the Sunrise Show. Craig Fronikin is your host, and continuing with Oregon State Representative Duane Stark. Duane, it's amazing that this marijuana Measure 91 and I know that the Senate, the special committee in the Senate, they were jumping up and down. They had hit an impasse, and then they finally decided, okay, let's find the common ground that we agree upon. And the one nut they couldn't come around was the allowing local jurisdictions to tax medical marijuana, or recreational marijuana for that matter. But continuing this HJR 91, now you've got both House and Senate committees, right?
Oh, as far as Measure 91?
Yes. The whole trying to figure out how to tax, how to regulate.
Yes, and so now both sides have put forward a bill, and have said, we don't need the Measure 91 committee, we can do it without. Now, they do need the Measure 91 committee.
Right.
They've been working on this. And so the House bill does actually, it begins with the original Measure 91 bill that they were talking about, and kind of says, well, even if you guys don't come to a conclusion on this, we're going to start moving. And the Senate bill, I actually don't know really where that originated. I do want to clarify, just a minute ago I said I wasn't quite sure on the local control. So the Senate bill, as written, now all of this, things change.
Exactly. It's not written in stone. They could change it again. Yeah. But as it's written right now.
As it's written right now, the Senate bill would allow local, counties and cities to ban medical marijuana. And by allowing them to ban, then in order to change that, the citizens would go out and do their petition. Whereas the House bill says, no, because this started with the voters, any changes, any bans would have to start with the voters or be referred to the voters. So, Josephine County, Jackson County could say, yeah, we want to ban this, and they would have to put it out to the voters, and the voters would have to say yes.
Okay.
So, and then one of them, I don't know. The House bill, like I said, 104-page amendment that we're just starting to see, and it's almost like you have to read it to know what's in it, sort of thing.
Well, exactly. And here's the next thing, Duane. We haven't even talked about this. The Democrats are a majority in the Senate, a majority in the House, but they're also a majority in these committees.
Yes. And that's what's interesting for, as a Republican in the minority, every time something comes forward, we have to decide, do we work hard to make it better? And if we agree with it, or even if we don't agree with it, you have to decide, do you work hard, try to make it better, get it, and therefore you end up voting for it,
right,
even if it's not perfect, or do you step back and just say, you are so far off on that you're going to own it?
Exactly, because you could get sucked into voting on a Democrat bill.
Yeah, and so when it comes to this, really the Republican caucus is looking to the leadership of Rep. Wilson and Rep. Olson,
right,
who are on the Measure 91 committee, have spent significant time researching this and in on the conversation. So really, most of the caucus, yes, we can have our own thoughts on these things, but these are the guys that are in the trenches, and so we're looking to them saying, good or bad, guys, what's happening, what's changing? Can we get behind this and say it takes a crazy thing and makes it a little more manageable? Crazy as in it's a legal mess.
Yeah.
And make it more manageable, or do we need to be hands off on this? So
exactly.
and the clock is ticking.
The clock is ticking. And what's the talk about when the session will end? I was saying the end of June and stay away from the first 3 days of July, correct?
Well, the original target, sine die date was June 26th, and that has become somewhat of a joke now.
Oh, gosh.
And so we're expecting to go at least a week into July.
I wasn't thinking they would even get anywhere close to July 4th.
As of yesterday, there were a handful of people thinking, a couple days after the 4th of July. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, the governor a little while back said until we get a transportation package, we're not going home. So
wow, there's so many more issues that the $100 million that Governor Kate Brown wants to borrow for affordable housing and all that kind of crazy stuff. But Duane, here's what I want to do in our last minute. I'd like to have you tell our listeners how important it is that our listeners get involved and write and call and send emails and be part of it and encourage, empower the legislators up there.
And absolutely, there are several bills this session that I've seen where people got vocal about them. They started saying, we don't want this, or we want it. And so we need to hear from you. It is best to figure out what committee your issue is assigned to and specifically focus your attention on those reps and senators.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in the marijuana issue, look up the Measure 91 committee and start sending them your feedback. If you are interested in guns, look up rules or judiciary, depending on where it's gone, and send them your feedback. Speak up, be heard, because we do listen. And right now, the majority party has run so hard on the things they wanted to accomplish that they're starting to let up off the gas a little bit, worried about have they taken it too far and will there be a backlash next time there's an election. And so we want people, right now is an opportunity to speak up, and if you see something you don't want to happen, speak up. You have an opportunity to apply some pressure and say, hey, we will remember how you governed, and so don't do this.
Well, that's exactly it. That's the next thing, of course, is are they listening? And I tell people, listen, don't get discouraged if you call one time and don't get a note back or send an email back one time. Be ready to send 2 and 3 and 4, and then keep track of your responses, and that's hugely important as well. So.
Yep.
Good deal.
And go beyond just the putting your name on the list that does the mass mailer. That
Yeah, they want personal. They want personal notes. Yeah.
Tell us your personal story about how this is going to affect you, and why we need to do it or not to do it because of your personal story.
Exactly. Duane, we're out of time, but thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Oregon State Representative Duane Stark from District 4, and he's up there in Salem slugging it away. Duane, thank you so much, and keep up the good work, and we so appreciate the report.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Okay. Take care. Wow, big weekend coming. We'll be right back. More on the Sunrise Show.